the ghetto was built after the first deportation. They decimated the whole population of Jews in Tarnów. The first deportation and killing was over 13,000 people out of 25,000. And my father, when he heard rumors that the Germans planned to organize a deportation, he built a hiding place in a woodshed, building a little attic in the woodshed, just in case we have to hide. This was on a farm behind the city, overlooking the Jewish cemetery. We lived over there because a year before, a German, a Volksdeutscher, means a Polish person of German descent, came with police to our house, and he gave us with a document that we have to leave this apartment in 24 hours and leave all the furniture behind. So my father, at 24 hours, it was so crowded in this city that you couldn't find any place to live. So he found a little farmhouse overlooking the Jewish cemetery, right on the border of the town, and that's where we lived, in one-room apartment in a hut with one table, 4 chairs, and 2 beds, and a built-in kitchen. And that's where my father and I had to hide when we heard the deportation going on. We heard hundreds of people being driven out in the street, going past our house. So my father went across the courtyard to a Jewish policeman, because the Germans organized a Jewish police to help him look for the Jewish people. My father asked the policeman, "What's going on?" The policeman says, "I don't know myself, nobody told me anything." As my father came out of this policeman's house, 5 Gestapo officers, this was the secret police, German secret police, came into the courtyard. And my father got so scared, he didn't have any jacket, no papers on him, and if you didn't have any paper on your identification, you were shot on the spot. So he was shaking, and he leaned himself against the wall and was waiting for the Gestapo man to ask him a question. The Gestapo man says, "Are you drunk?" My father says, "No," because he was visibly shaking. So he says, "Are you sick?" My father says, "No." He says, "Where do you live?" So my father pointed out across the courtyard. So he says, "Go home." That was a greatest miracle that he didn't ask for his identification card, because he would have been shot on the spot. After the Gestapo left and it quieted down a little bit, my father says to me, "This is the time to go into hiding place." And we crawled into that crawl space in the woodshed. And we were sitting over there, all scrunched up, and through the shingles of the roof, I saw something going on at the Jewish cemetery. And my father was telling me, pulling me away, don't look through the shingles because someone's going to see you. But I was a young kid and I was curious. So I went to look again and I saw a horrible thing. Group after group of people, the Jewish people were brought into the cemetery under German guards, escort, and a group of German soldiers who were waiting at the cemetery already with guns, and they told the Jews to dig a ditch. After they dug the ditch, they lined them up, kneeled down near the grave, near the ditch, and shot them in the back of the head, every one of them. And then another group came in, and they told the new group that came in to shove the bodies into the gravesite and put lime on top of the bodies. Lime eats away the flesh. And this was like this was going on like this all day. Group after group were digging ditches all around the cemetery. They brought in, this I will never forget, and still in my mind, in the back of my mind. They brought in pregnant women, a bunch of pregnant women. And they didn't use bullets, they used bayonets. They pierced the bayonets to the belly, to the women's bellies, and the children that they were holding in their hands, in their arms, they took away, and I don't know how a person can do it, grab the children by the legs and smash their heads against the wall. This was the first deportation. Over 13,000 people. After the deportation was finished, they told us to move into the designated area in the city, and where it was overcrowded already at that time, and they built a wooden fence around the city, around they call the ghetto. They built the first ghetto, and this was 1942, the spring of 1942. They didn't let us in peace. Every day there were other orders that you have to follow, and my mother's uncle, who had a lumber yard, it was just happened that the lumber yard was inside the designated ghetto. But the lumber yard he couldn't use. It was his property, but he couldn't use. There was he couldn't use it as a business. But my mother's uncle and my father decided to build hiding places in case another deportation will be organized. So they went into the lumberyard and dug 2 hiding places under the floorboards of the lumber shack. And there was a rumor, this was in summer of 1942, that there's going to be another deportation. My father said to us, to his family, let's go into the lumberyard for the night, just in case it happens early in the morning. We don't have to run to the lumberyard from our building. So we stayed overnight in the lumberyard. Sure enough, the next day my father must have heard some rumors, because he had connections with still with the city people, and in the morning we heard the gate of the ghetto gate open up, and trucks were coming in. So my father says, "This is it," and we quickly went under the floorboards of the lumberyard, and soon enough there were yellings and German Shepherd dogs barking, and we heard shootings. And while we were there underneath the floorboards, and two Polish collaborators came into the lumberyard, to the shack, to relieve themselves. And they were standing right above our heads, when one said to the other, "If I find a Jew, I won't give him over to the Germans. I will cut off with my axe his head myself." And they were standing right above our heads. And my uncle, my mother's uncle, didn't make it with his family to his hiding place, because he was cut off by the Germans, coming towards the lumberyard. That's what my father was afraid of. It was all luck, all luck. After the deportation was over, after 4 days, we were underneath 4 days, and we took food with us. And we were there in the dark, except for a little light that was coming from the Magdeburgplatz. That's the name of the place outside the lumberyard. Because the shack, the lumber shack, was on stilts, so we saw a little light from it. So that's how we knew when it was day, when it was light, when it was night. Afterwards, after 4 days, we came out, and my father said, "Today is the day of atonement." And the Germans set up tables on the Magdeburgplatz, that was like a square, where every morning people were going out to work in factories, were lined up and marched off to the gate outside. That was the place where they met and marched off. The Germans put up tables from each factory, and whoever was left from the Jews after the deportation, they had to go over to the tables and re-register. So my mother was in front of me, and the foreman said to the German officer, he says, "Not her, she's too old." So my mother stepped aside, And I followed and I looked at him, the foreman. He knew me because I was in his, together with his son in the same class. And besides that, he knew me because an incident was in a place of work where I was walking with those coats on my shoulder to the other side of the building, and there was a group of inspectors from Berlin coming towards me, and a woman stepped aside and she in front of me, and she said, "Oh, what a poor boy, armer Bursch." And I found out later this was Mr. Madrich's wife. And an hour later, I was called to the office. I said to myself, boy, then I need to scroll a kid over here, so I lost my job already. No, but Mr. Madrich was in the middle of the floor in the office, and he said, "Martin Spett?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Are you hungry?" I said, "No." Are you healthy?" I said, "Yes." He says to me, "If you need something, come straight to me, I will give it to you, whatever you need." So I said to myself, a German should talk like this to a Jew? Whatever he's going to give me, who knows? But after the deportation, when my mother stepped aside from the table, and I went over to my mother. She says she was white like a sheet of paper, and I said I was scared for her because she was very desperate, and she said, "What am I going to do now? They're going to deport me. I lost my job." So I looked around, and I see the foreman and Mr. Madrich and the Gestapo officer standing and talking. I don't know where I got this nerve to go over to Mr. Madrich. I said, "Mr. Madrich." "Oh," he says, "the younger," he says, "the young boy." So he says, I said to him, "My mother was working in a new place, a new factory," and I pointed to the foreman. I said, "Mr. Weinstock didn't want to register her." So Mr. Madrich bent over to the Gestapo man's ear. This is the Gestapo is the secret police. And he whispered something into his ear. And the Gestapo man took me by the shoulder. That time, when the Gestapo took you by the shoulder, it meant only one thing: you never see the lights again. So he led me to the table where the German soldier was sitting with a book, and he told the soldier, "Schreib seine Mutter ein," write his mother's name in. And my mother had to come over and tell him her name. And this was how Mr. Madrich saved her. My mother with her American birth certificate in her pocket. She almost lost her life twice. Once, when we came from work, the gate of the ghetto opened up, and everybody was having something underneath the coat because we were hungry. We couldn't get any food. So the farmers went secretly behind the building of our factories and exchanged for pillowcases, for shirts, food. So when the gate opened up, and we saw the Gestapo man standing right in the middle of the square, and everybody had to go through him and open the coat to show that they have nothing underneath. You know what happened? People were dropping butter, cookies, bread, everything on the floor, and people trampled all over the stuff. But this Gestapo man wasn't satisfied. He told the women to separate men from women and form a line on opposite sides. And he went from one woman to another first to look over. A young girl, instead of throwing the cookies, a box of cookies about a cigar box, like a cigar box, instead of throwing on the floor, she threw it over the fence. So the Gestapo man wouldn't see it, but he saw the box flying. He didn't see which woman threw it, but he saw the box flying. So he went, after the woman lined up, he went over to the first woman in the first row, and pulled one out by the lapel and put the gun to her face. Now, who do you think it was? My mother. With her American birth certificate in her pocket. I saw that, I started screaming. I heard the Gestapo man say, "It doesn't make any difference to me which one," and pushed my mother back and took another woman out of the second row, and shot her 3 times in the face. And I started screaming because when I saw the gun pointing in my mother's face, I knew what's coming. I started screaming out, so the man behind me put his hand across my mouth to keep me quiet. But the Gestapo man, I don't know what happened. It was a miracle that he changed his mind. And that's how we lived, in fear, every day, every minute of the day, because the Gestapo had permission to go into factories, even though they were military factories organized by military and working for the military. They had the power to take anybody out of the workers' group and shoot them on the spot. That's how powerful they were.
Can you describe your family's narrow escape on November 15, 1942?
November 15, 1942. Yes. I woke up in the morning to go to work, and the windows from our apartment we lived, we were overcrowded in this apartment. People were sleeping on the floor, dressed, ready to go to work, And I was dressing, and I heard something outside in the street, because the windows were facing outside the ghetto. And as I looked out of the window, through the window, I saw military trucks coming into the ghetto with soldiers on top and dropping off Polish policemen at intervals in the opposite side of the street to guard the ghetto so nobody can escape. And I started yelling, "The Germans are here, the Germans are here." I was Paul Revere in those days. So everybody started running like mice, you know, they didn't know where to go. And we had in mind to run towards the lumberyard to hide. So all four of us, my parents and my sister, were running down the street. All of a sudden we see German soldiers coming our way. So we turned around and we're going back. And there was a big courtyard, and there was a chaos over there. Everyone was running, calling the names of their relatives, of their friends, and they were climbing on the ladder, trying to get into a hole in the wall. My sister was in front of me. She was a little girl with pigtails, and she turns around and she said, "I'm not going in there." And she runs into the street. So when we were going, let her alone, we followed her. She was running towards our house where we lived. On the way, my mother said, "You know, I overheard someone say that they're building a hiding place in the apartment in our building. Let's go over there." We come to the balcony that goes around the courtyard. And at the end of the balcony, there was an apartment. We come to the apartment door, and there was a lock, a padlock on the door. My father turns to me. He says, "Quickly go to our apartment, bring the axe from the apartment." I brought the axe. My father was chopping off the lock while the Germans were coming into the building downstairs and yelling, Jews out," and breaking down the doors. Meanwhile, my father broke the lock and we got into the apartment. It was quiet, and my mother said in a quiet voice, "Where are the Spetts, your neighbors? Please answer us. I know that you have a hiding place here." Quiet, nobody answers anything. So my mother in a louder voice says, "If you don't answer, I'll move the furniture around." Suddenly, a voice from underneath the bed. The bed was leaning against the wall, and it seems like there was another room behind the wall, and they took out the framework from the door, the door frame, and they camouflaged the wall. And they put the bed against the wall, and the voice said, "Bend down, slide underneath the bed, and there is an opening in the wall." We bent down and slid under the bed, and there was a square, open square. And as soon as we got into the other room, there were 14 people. We realized there were 14 people in there already, hiding. And the man says to us, "Quickly, close the square." And everybody held their breath because the Germans were coming closer and closer. And we heard a German voice by the door. "Oh, we were here already," because the lock was broken. So they thought they were already over here before. And they didn't even come into the apartment to look. They left. And we also, 4 days, we were in a room with those 14 people there. One pail served as a toilet. Those people shared their meager rations with us. It seems like the owners of the apartment had 2 daughters that left early in the morning to work, and they put the padlock on the door. But those 2 girls never came back. And after 4 days we came out, we joined the working group again.
Okay. So you were sent to political prison instead of the concentration camp, right?
At first, yes. But I have to tell you that in 1942, the end of 1942 in the ghetto was terrible. The population was decimated. The conditions were deteriorating, and it became 1943 already, and it was getting worse and worse. In 1943, May 10, 1943, a Gestapo man came to the ghetto asking if there are any Americans, after all these deportations. Now the Gestapo came to ask if there are any American or British citizens are left. So at first my mother was afraid to say, here is an American, with her birth certificate in her pocket all the time. The birth certificate was falling apart already. But the situation was so bad that she conferred with my father, and they decided that she will go alone to confront the Gestapo men. And when she came in there was a little building in the middle of the Magdeburgplatz. It was a police station. And when she came in front of the Gestapo man, he asked her, "Do you have a husband and children?" She didn't know what to answer. But the president of the Jewish community, who knew us, and he knew what's going on, he was standing next to the table, the Gestapo man's table. He says to my mother, "Of course you have a husband and children. Tell her." So the Gestapo man asked, "Where are they?" So she pointed out the window. We're standing outside. And they called us in, and the Gestapo man said, "1 valise per person tomorrow morning." It was May 11th, 1943. A horse and wagon was waiting for us, and we were supposed to go to the train station. People came to say goodbye to us. Some were pessimists. They said, don't sit near the edge of the boat because you're going to fall into the water, such things, but the foreman, Mr. Weinstock from the factory that didn't want my mother on the list, grabbed me by the arm and he says, "Tell the world what you have seen over here. You are young, you will live. Tell the world what you have seen." So the horse and wagon came to the railroad station, and the train took us to Krakow, Poland, which is 40 kilometers from Tarnów. And from the station we marched to we didn't know where we were going. All of a sudden we came to a big building with bars on the windows and a big metal gate, iron gate, solid iron gate, opened up, and they marched us through into the courtyard of a prison called Montelupich.